Hello everyone, Hammad here. Welcome to my channel, Cloud with Hammad, DIY Cloud Learning to Inspire. For today, our cloud series, this is part 4 of the video series. I will be provisioning a PaaS service, which is Platform as a Service, known as Azure Active Directory Domain Services, AADS. Once implemented, I will also deploy a Windows virtual desktop using this AADS. By using AADS, this ability extends central identity use case to traditionally web application that runs on Azure as a part of lift and shift strategy, also known as rehosting. It's a migration strategy that involves moving data and application from on-premises location to Azure-based virtual machine in the cloud. Also, lift and shift allow organization to keep running their application with minimum changes and disruption. Now, without further ado, let's go to our notes. But before we do that, if you are new to my channel, please subscribe, like, and share with friends. I would really appreciate it. Quickly, let's discuss the architect here. Just to recap, on my first video, I deployed an Active Directory, created some users and computers, and then on my second video, I deployed an AD Connect to synchronize on-premises AD to Azure AD on one of my tenants. Once I synchronized this, I had a workable domain controller, and then what I did was, in my third video, I deployed DAS service, which is Desktop as a Service, Azure Virtual Desktop, that is Windows Virtual Desktop, and this service requires a domain controller, or basically an authentication through a domain controller, to be workable. So we use this to authenticate users which are on domain controller. And then there are certain applications that are basically still working on premises, but let's say if you want to do a lift and shift strategy, what you do is, instead of disrupting application here, what you do is you have an VM in cloud and you use the same application to authenticate user, rather than from on cloud. You base on premises, you basically deploy a service called Active Directory Domain Control Services, AADS, and authenticate those users from AADS. It's a process the same. What happens is the domain control on premises syncs to Active Directory Azure, and then Azure basically syncs with here in AADS. Okay, so that explains a little bit what I'm going to do. Once I deploy this, I'll also deploy Windows Virtual Desktop, create a user, and basically in AD, and then basically make sure that that user gets synced into ADS, and then authenticate, deploy this virtual desktop and authenticate this users through AADS by using a domain controller onto the cloud, not on the prem. So I'll create an ID. I'll make sure that I use that ID to authenticate and deploy virtual desktop using AADS. So once I create an ID here, that ID is not syncing back to on-premises. So that shows that, the project was successful. Okay, let's quickly discuss what AADS is. AADS is actually provides managed domain services with a subset of fully compatible traditional AADS features such as domain join, group policy, LDAP, and Kerberos, and LTLM authentication. Azure AADS integrate with Azure, which itself can synchronize with on-premises AADS environment. This ability extends central identity use case to traditional web application that runs in Azure as a part of lift and shift strategy. I actually explained that you don't need to have application moving from on-premises to cloud. You can just have you can build another application, same thing, take the code to the cloud and authenticate those users instead of on-premises through Active Directory Domain Services. What are the features? Simple deployment, single managed domain per user, AD tenant, and then high available. Obviously, it has 2 domain controllers, so I'll show you over there. And there's a health detection, sync to AD Connect, synced SID histories, domain join. So these are the features. You can set up policies, and then again, it's essentially to understand the difference between when you are looking at lift and shift scenario for on-prem to IS. If you are moving to cloud by subscribing to SaaS application or rewriting existing application using modern PaaS service, you want to take advantage of Azure Active Directory, AADS. AADS is our cloud-based identity solution that allows you to leverage users, group application, and security principal concept. It supports web-based authentication, SAML 2.0, OpenID authentication, and framework. So I think this is a little too much information, but what we'll do is we'll actually go through the documentation. I also have this is the landing page for Active Directory Domain Controller. Once again, overview is lift and shift apps to Azure more easily than ever. LDAP, rely on manage high available service. There are 2 domain controllers that get deployed. Started in a minute, pay as you go, and then develop, test, no identity worries, manage Azure virtual machine. So these are I'll leave the link. Also, the documentation that I'll follow is this. I'll also leave the link. It has all the details. It gives you all the information that I just said. I'll explain it while we're going, some videos, and then also tutorial. We'll actually go through this, and I'll go through each individual process. So once we follow this, it's pretty much the same thing. We'll create the domain, we'll have a domain join, and then we'll make sure the DNS is set up, configured, and then once that is done, we'll create a user, and then next thing is we would create the network first, but these are the steps that you need to follow to make sure that is done. Once this is all set up, I will actually deploy virtual desktop and use that new user to authenticate through Active Directory. So that will tell you that that user that we created in Azure Active Directory is actually like it's not on-prem, it's just on Azure Active Directory, and it's authenticating and it's deploying the whole virtual desktop through that. All right, so let's go to our deployment and see how it works. All right, guys, so I'm gonna the next step is we created the resource group. AADS, and we paired this with on-premises resource group, and then we also made sure that let's quickly discuss the VNet here. DNS, we'll say, I think it was save, so that the data can make sure that this AADS knows where the on-prem DNS is. Okay, so let's go ahead and deploy the resource group, the resource itself. So for that, you just come here and type in actually maybe you can do just domain, and it will AADS Azure AD Domain Services, and then you make sure you have the right subscription. Select the AADS, and then resource group. Domain controller, I would give it a name AADS, but let's say if you have a domain that is on-prem a domain that has a domain that has a DNS of, let's say, google.com, and you don't want that the new domain services to have the google.com, you can actually put in google1.com, and then when you registered your own new domain, I would suggest making sure you have a wildcard cert, so that when you're doing LDAP, like you go through LDAP authentication, you have that wildcard cert imported through the PFX files, the whole 9 yard. I'll make one video as well for that, but for now, just make sure you have either another domain that is a new domain, or you can add one, just like I did. I already have a domain here as hamadsiddiqui.1, which is actually on premises. I think I showed you guys earlier as well. And then region, same thing. Enterprise SQA, I will keep it as standard because we don't have that much of subscription pricing and whatever. User, will leave it like that as well because we don't have much of a resource. And then click next. Virtual network, it will create a new virtual network, or you just pick up another one. We'll just the one that we created for this service. Subnet, we'll use the same subnet, and click next. And then this is AADS administrator, that is the domain controller administrator, that is like a local admin. So I actually created an admin, it's I think admin at hamadsiddiqui.com. I'll show you in the AD as well, but this person is already set up as a user. This is not a global admin, this is a user that is actually in the on the cloud, on the on-premises as well. So I'll explain that in a second. And then this is basically notification, all global admin and Azure AD, and then these people will get notification if anything happens. Click next. The scoped, you want to have group or you want to have users only. You can scope it to the AD users, or just click here. You can select these group. If they have many more group, you can add them, or you can just have all users synced up. I'm just going to leave it as all user for now, and then click next. And then over here, basic TLS mode will enable it, and TLM will enable it. Password synchronization is enable. We'll just leave it like this. Synchronization enable, and then Kerberos is also enable, and Kerberos. So these are the requirements. This totally depends on your business case. I'm just going to leave all of them enabled, but I would say all whatever you need, you can just use the way it's supposed to be, your business needs are. Click next, tag, and then this is all the details. And then you will, the validation is passed. You hit create. Once you hit create, these information will not change. DNS, which is AADS hamadsiddiqui.ml. Subscription, we already know where it is. Resource group, we created. Network group, we created. Subnet, we gave them. And forest name, which is AADS.hamadsiddiqui.ml. So when we log in, once this is going to be create, when this will create, it will create 2 domain controllers, and then that's for basically high available. So if something goes on to one of them, other one will happen, other will authenticate. So once this is set up, then the next step would be we will create a machine, which will be actually a management machine, which we will log in and basically manage these domain controllers. So this usually takes good 30 minutes, so we'll just leave it as it is, and then we will start deploying machines. Alright guys, so while it's still taking place, let's quickly, as you can see, NSG was created, VNet was created, now it's setting up AADS domain. So while it's happening, let's quickly discuss the documentation. So as you can see, the following steps we have already performed. We used the resource group that we created, we gave the name, and then where we want to deploy it, standard, SKU, all the information is there. Forest, what does that mean? And then and then make sure that once it's deployed, it's going to say deploying, which is what's going to happen is once this is all set up, it will come up with this interface. It will still say deploying. It takes good 40 minutes to get that taken care. Once it's running, we want to make sure that we have DNS updated. So it will create 2 DNS addresses, 2 domain controllers. So we'll make sure that we configure that, fix that, and then once that is happening, AD sync will automatically basically push the users from on-prem to Active Directory on Azure, and that Active will start syncing the users to these domain controllers. So that's like, we'll also create 1 user so that we have one in AD as well. Then the next step is to configure network app. I think we will, let me see what's going on here. We don't have to do that because what we're going to do is we'll use Windows Virtual Desktop to deploy that. In the meantime, what we'll do is we also, once this is deployed, there will be like how do you manage those 2 domain controllers. For that, you need to deploy another a VM or a server. I would take 2016, and then once that is done, we will join that to domain, which is AADS.hamadsiddiqui.ml, which is what we created, so that we know that that machine is domain joined. Once that is done, that machine is actually a remote management tool. You can have Bastion host to connect, but we'll just log into that VM and then basically download a remote management tool. This is what it's showing up as. We'll change the domain, and then it will come to our domain, and then the next step is we'll install a management tool to manage that domain controller. So we'll basically go to that server and install that Active Directory administrative tool, and then we'll make sure we log into that administrative tool, and we use that domain joint ID to make sure that this is set up. And after that, we don't have to do configure LDAP, but this is what I was talking about. So you do need a cert to upload as an PFX file. You have to just use this and generate your own wildcard cert or regular cert, and then upload to LDAP up here. Upload this cert, and then use the LDAP, secure LDAP. You need to enable it, upload that cert, have a password, and that's how you would make sure that your wildcard cert or cert for that domain is uploaded and it's working. And then you basically configure the password hash onto the on your domain controller so that it's synced, the IDs which are new with new passwords, so that it can authenticate through Active Directory. So we'll go through, actually we will do this as well, so why not we just show you how that works. Also, replica set, if you want to get another copy made, that's how you would do it. Customize management, you don't need to create a forward trust. I would not worry about it. I think that will be good enough for the exercise. The how-to is the same way. This is more like how you would do it, which we're doing. So we'll just wait for domain controller to come back online. All right, guys, so the deployment has taken place. Let's quickly check one thing here. So it took roughly 1 hour to deploy the whole AADS, and I think it's still going on. So if I go up here to go to resources, you can see that the domain controller is set up. The domain is set up as AADS.hamadsiddiqui.ml, but in here it still says deploying. So it takes good about an hour and a half. Now it's going to deploy. It's going to say sync. It's going to sync with Azure AD, and then it's going to be in good health. I think I already have defined the DNS, which we don't need to set it up. But it says the managed domain is being provisioned. This operation will take a while. So we'll just wait for it to show up, and then we'll go from there. In the meantime, we will create some users, and then we will also create a VM to connect to the domain controller shortly. All right, guys. So while it's still deploying, it usually takes good an hour, half. So what we'll do is we'll actually let it deploy. It says being domain is provisioned. So in the meantime, what we'll do is we'll actually deploy a virtual machine, which is going to be a management tool, which is when we look at the documentation, we need to install a management tool. So this is what we're going to do next. For that, this management tool, configure and administer Azure Active Directory Domain Services. So in the meantime, while this is taking place, we'll just go and deploy a virtual machine. So for that, we'll just take any server. I think we should just do 2016. Back and check. Oh, okay, so it's running. So it's now, you can see it's running as well. So refresh, and it says configure issue for your managed, because I think we need to point out to make sure that we have entry of a DNS. So if we say it's an automatic tool, so network diagnostic provides that capability of checking the logicals. So it looks for domain services, and so if I run it, it's going to tell me that the DNS needs to be fixed. So I need to fix it. So if I fix it, it should go in and check for DNS, local DNS. It's going to look at it, and then it's going to add that 10 dot. So if I go up here, and you can see that it's okay now. So if I go back to let me show you, actually much easier to show. So if I click overview, refresh, it is running. So we have a domain controller. So if I go here and go to resource group, so now we should have, so okay, yeah, one more thing. So when we deployed the domain controller, it had a load balancer because there are two VMs, AADS and AADS. These are two domain controllers, network interface card, a security group, virtual network, domain services, and this is the one AADS VM we're going to control. We're going to log into this one. We'll join it to this domain, and then these are IP, and this is the disk. So as what I'm saying is, it creates two domain controllers, and we will manage these controllers via this machine that we just created. Well, so what I was going to tell you is, where is it? So I click here, and these two interfaces, that domain controller I showed you, also had two IP addresses. This is the DNS addresses, 10.0.4 and 5, so it's going to be in the DNS boxes as well. So you can see these are the IPs of the DNS boxes. So as you can see, these are the two domain controllers set up. So this is already set up, and what we're doing is, once this VM is deployed, which already did, so we'll log in and we'll basically join it to the domain through a domain admin password. So for that, let me explain one more thing here. So we'll just open this one again, another window. You can go back and forth to home. I'm just going to leave it open for me, easier for me to work through it. That's why I'm just leaving it open. Otherwise you can. So I'm just going to go back here, and now the next step would be to create a user, and I will use that user as a global administrator, and then I will also add that to the AADS domain administrator so that I can remote in, and I would be able to join that to a domain. You can do that with any admin ID. So I mean, I have, as I said, I had a couple of IDs already set up. I'm going to show you in a second here as soon as this logs in. So if I go up to Active Directory and I go to user, so if I go into I have this admin at hammadsiddiqui.ml. This is synced from the on-prem AD. So I think I haven't showed you yet the on-prem AD, but AD sync has been working at the back end. So if I go up here and I click on user and computer, and this is one of the domain that is running. So user, I think I had a user administrator. So it's being synced by like it's like AD Connect, and it's going to AD here. So this, if I click here, I won't be able to do anything because it's coming from on-prem. In order for me to change this password even, it will have to basically go on to do domain. So if I click change password, unfortunately this current license does not allow you to reset because this is coming from on-prem, and then obviously I'm sure there is a license restraint too as well. So I will create another user, while just be patient with that, and then I would say AADS admin, and then and then I would I use any of my domain. I would say AAD admin, and I would just AADS admin. Let me create the password. Well, actually, maybe I should just take the password, and because I have to change it too. So again, I can. This is for now, so it doesn't really matter. This is going to get changed. I'll copy this password, and I will create this user. So once the user is created, this is the AADS admin. I would go to private window, just making sure I log in. That oh, actually, let's before portal.azure.com. Just gonna minimize this for a second. What I need to do is I need to make this an admin. So I would assign a role. So click here, and I would say he is a global administrator. So, and I'll copy this, add, and now if I refresh it, it will show up in a second here. And then while it does that, I'm just gonna go ahead and add him to a group. In a group, we'll just click here. And this is the group that I want him to be, AADS DC administrator. And then if I want to do a local admin for the subscription, which is where this is where it is, I'll just have this in here. He's a part of 2 of them. This is important for me to have because with this ID, I will join him to the domain controller. And if I think I've showed you earlier that this domain gets when they created, these are the 2 people that get logged in over there. Okay, so go back here. Actually, let me go back here for a second. And I would say assigned role, and you can see this is a global administrator. Again, come here, time in AADS admin at hammadsiddiqui.ml. Next. Password. Next. And then I'm going to log in as a global admin, and then I also logged in. I am a part of a domain administrator for the AADS, so I'll skip it for the day. 14 days actually. I want to see this. So I'm logged into portal. I have this is a global admin, so I can just go and check if you want to see a little bit more. Just let's say Active Directory. Actually, if I go here, this is all the information. Click here. Little extra, but you can see my role is a global administrator. All right, so I'm gonna just sign out from here. I don't need this. I'll close this browser, and now I will go back and log into the VM. VM login, I would just use. Okay, so for VM, we just created this VM, right? So we'll copy this. Now what we're doing is we're joining the domain of this VM. So we're just in this step. So we're just going to go through, we'll join the domain. Next step is to install the management tool, which is going to be the next step I created. So AADS Siddiqui. All right, so I think it's joined. As you can see, AADS Hammad Siddiqui with the ID. Click OK. It's going to ask me to restart. Once I restart, I should be able to remote into that machine. So I'm going to close this, restart. All right, after restart, I'm going to log into that VM, the one that we just joined the domain. Change the, it would be AADS admin at hammadsiddiqui.ml, and password. There you go. So now we have logged in with the ID that we created, AADS, and then the password the one that we set up. And then this is the machine that I joined to the domain, which is AADS.hammad.siddiqui.ml. So I'm going to just show you in a second here once this loads up. So I go to local, and you can see up here the domain right now is AADS.hammad.siddiqui.ml. So if I go here and I go to remote and I select user, I can add let's say admin, which is actually in the domain. You can see it's looking. I'll tell you why it's looking. So you can see it's here. So now that's one of the cases. Cancel this out, cancel this out. So you can see we have this. Now the next step is per the document, we need to create we have to install management tools. So this is the process we're going to follow. I'm going to show you in a second here. I would go up here, and actually I would add roles and features. Click next, 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 and then on the feature we'll go up here, and then for here you need to look for remote management RSAT tool. Remote server administration, you click on this one, and then that's about it. Okay, so I did a remote SAT tool, remote server administration. Click next, next, and then we want to make sure if you want to add some more features. This management tool is already there. Next, and install. So it's going to install the RSAT tool while it's doing. Let's go to documentation and check it out here. So again, RSAT tool, and then it's going to, once it's done, we're going to go to Windows Server Administration tool, and we will look for Administrative Center, or once we go in here, you will see that, you know, AADS domain, it's here. So we'll show you in there, and you can see all the domain. It's been, all the people are synchronized from Azure AD. And the next step is to secure the LDAP. We'll activate the LDAP, but we won't do the cert thing. You can actually follow the instructions if you like. So this is the instructions. If you ever need a LDAP, all you need to do is do this. Maybe we can, it doesn't have to be, but these are the information that you need to do. What we'll do is we'll do a hash, so that, you know, this is also a pretty simple, straightforward, but that has to be run onto the on-prem AD. So we'll do that, and then we'll actually go and deploy Windows Virtual Desktop. So let's go here. All right, this is complete. So we're going to close this, minimize this, go here, and administrative tool. And again, we'll go to administrative center. Here you can see we have domain, AADS. So if I click here, so it has all the information. Users, you can see all the users that are in the Active Directory. So let's say if I want to go here and type in admin, you can see all the admins that are actually in the, so test admin. This is the user that we created. So I got a couple of my admin ID, so AAD ID. So basically your domain is set. Let's change it to search it. You can see this account is actually in AD. So just to verify, if I minimize this and go to on-prem, and if I search for this user, you can see this user. So this user is an Azure AD, and that Azure AD is moving. So if I go here, so if I do Fremont, you can see this. So this got pushed into AADS, which is actually the remote SAT tool that is used to manage this user. All right, so the domain controller is set. Now it's working. You have all the information here. This is a global search. If you want to reset the password, you can reset the password. All the information about the domain. All right, so the next step is we will minimize this and we will go and run some commands. So we'll do hash first. Simple. Use this. So basically, hash synchronization is in between the hybrid environment. So you can synchronize NT LAN manager, NTLM, and Kerberos password. So as you can see, it says to use Azure ADDS with account synchronized from on-premises ADDS environment, you need to configure Azure AD Connect to synchronize those password hashes required to NTLM and Kerberos authentication. After Azure AD Connect is configured on premises, account creation of password change event also then synchronize the legacy password hashes to Azure AD. So we will run this command. Before that, we need to make sure we have all the details of this. So we will run this command. So we'll copy this. Let's go back to on-premises AD. This is the on-premises AD. We'll minimize this. And then we will go open PowerShell. Command is already there. So I think I've done this in the past. So I'm just going to replace this. So this information needs to be changed. So for that, you just need to go here. Actually, you just need to go here and then synchronize service. And this is in the document as well. So you should be able to look at the document and then hit connector. And this is the information you need. You copy this and you paste here. And then the next thing is you go back here for on-premises, copy this and then paste it here, which we already did. And so this document is pretty much the same. This script is actually in the document, so you just need to copy this information and then replace. It says to replace these information, which I did, and that shows these are the two stuff that you need to replace. And that's it. You minimize this screen. First, I would just give the variables. Okay, and then we would run this command. Run, and then simple. This is create a new force function full for password sync, and then parameter objects, which is updated existing connector. Copy this, and you would, and it's updated. So that's it. Your password is all set up. The next step would be to set up Windows Virtual Desktop. So for that, we'll just want to make sure that you understand. What we'll do is we'll basically set up a quick Windows Virtual Desktop. So Azure Virtual Desktop. This time we won't authenticate this users from on-premises AD. We'll just like use HP02 ECUS in personal VM. Yes. AADS VM WVD We don't need that image. We just pick one of them, doesn't really matter right now. Number of VM, we'll just do 1. Actually, let's do a previous personal breadth first. 2 users. Next. Image, we can just pick any image. This one is fine. SSD, virtual network, we just pick this one. Basic. This time, in my previous video, we did verify the domain. We put in Hammad, admin at hammadsiddiqui.ml. But today, we'll just drop this down and we'll use Azure Active Directory because our users are actually in Active Directory. This is virtual machine admin account. So this is a local admin. So test admin. And then this is a local account. So if you wanna have like a setup to basically demo desktop, there's no workspace, AADS, WVD. If you want to watch this video, you can click on my video here, and you can know how to deploy Windows Virtual Desktop. Next, tags, we don't need it. So we'll just create. So what's going to happen is this will create a pool of not a pool, like a personal Windows Virtual Desktop. And what we can do is we can log into this, and this will join to our AADS domains. So we can log in with our ID, which is actually in the domain. So we'll wait for this to deploy, and then I'll show you how to log in. Alright guys, so the deployment has finished. One thing that I'm going to check out, deployment detail, and click on here, and you can see it took good 18 minutes to deploy this Windows Virtual Desktop. So anyway, so we just minimize this. Let's go quickly check it out. So we have a host machine, and then one is unavailable. We will go to RDP, just basic troubleshooting, make sure device redirection is enabled, audio, sound on the remote computer, direct camera, save changes, session host, workspace, application group, assignment. We can remove this one here, or we can add some more people in there. Go back. There you go. So the desktop session for that admin is working. To recap what happened is to recap our exercise. We have deployed a domain controller, and we also deployed a Windows Virtual Desktop with the help of this domain controller. So that's how you would set up a domain services. And that's about it for today. Hope you liked the lab. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share with friends. Until next time, have a wonderful day.